all our viewers tonight that sometimes things doesn't work out. I'm also on a cell phone tonight. Our equipment didn't work out for us, and but this is how life is. The devil gives us a hassle at times. So anyhow, so good to have you with us, John.
Yeah.
For the viewers that don't know you and have little knowledge of Streams Ministries International, please give us a little short history and short information about who you are and what you stand in right now.
Yeah, so it's always fun trying to figure out the short history, because how short and how much do you actually put in? I grew up in an unchristian home. I had alcoholism was rampant in our family. So when I became a teenager, I became an alcoholic and a drug addict. And in my early 20s, I had an encounter with God and just was radically changed. Literally overnight, no longer had a desire to do drugs, drink.
Wow.
I was aware of God's presence and was hearing his voice. I'd always had supernatural experiences in my life, but most of them on the bad side. But after that, they started being encounters with God. And so I just pursued, what does that look like? And how do I respond to this God that loves me so much that he would change my life? And so I really started pressing into understanding how to hear from him and how to respond to him. And I ran into this guy, John Paul Jackson, that taught about that. So I started studying with him. And over a few years, I ended up being on staff with him. And after he passed away in 2015, I was asked to take over Streams Ministries. So I now run Streams Ministries and teach people how to respond to this God that is so radically in love with his people.
Wow, that's good. I love you say, I love you emphasize that God is so much in love with us.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone is walking with that picture of who God the Father is. But that revelation came to me actually in Texas, my friend. In
really?
San Antonio, Texas, 2002. I had a home visitation of the Father's love. You know, all my life, yeah, I'm giving you, you know, we're getting to know one another on Facebook Live now. But I was, as a Pentecostal, I was crying out for the power of God, like Rodney Howard-Browne, like John G. Lake, or whatever you have. But little did I know the Father. Little did I know his love for me. I had intellectual knowledge that there is a Father up there, but my relationship was very much to the Son and to the Spirit. And but God is so sovereign, and he's not answering all our prayers the way we want him to answer it. But he answered with what I needed, and I needed the Father's love. Because you and I know that power, revelation, all these manifestations of the Spirit without the love of God, it's nothing.
Yeah.
God is not impressed. He's scared. He's scared. So I had a 3-day encounter where I didn't ask for it. I asked for the power of God. God came and visited me with his love. And in that visitation, I heard the words for the first time in my life. I read them 1,000 times before, but I heard them spoken out of the mouth of God to myself. He said, "You are my beloved son." Wow. In a little duplex apartment on the south side of San Antonio. Come on, somebody. Right next to, wrong side of the tracks, next to the basketball court, whatever. That's where I had a 3rd-degree encounter with the love of the Father. Wow. And that led to many other things, of course, especially the Son identity, and out of that Son identity, the miraculous or whatever. But that's my story. That's my story.
Wow.
Well,
that's
we're
awesome.
so happy that you're here, John. And tonight we want to talk a little bit. What's happening with you right now? What are your we're coming up to the new year.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're one of those people asking God, what are you going to do 2019? I don't know what you're asking God for. What is your sense? What are you standing in right now? Is there something that you see on the horizon? Is there something that you know is going to happen 2019? I mean, conference. I know you have a conference coming up soon, right?
We do. Yeah, we're doing a Love and Prophecy conference. And part of that was because of this need for us to really get anchored in the love of God and understand how that changes the way that we hear from him. But it also changes the way that we release the prophetic. Because if our release of the prophetic does not carry the love of God, there's something wrong. And so, yeah, that's one of the themes that I really feel for this year, for 2019 in the prophetic movement. I have a real heart to see the prophetic movement become all that is possible, because we desperately need to hear God's voice. There are nations that need to hear God's voice. There are churches that need to hear God's voice. There are individuals that need to hear God's voice. And as we can grow and as we can mature in our ability, we're going to be able to provide that. And as things get crazy and there's so much confusion and so much question as to what's true and what's real and what can we trust and what can't we trust, that we need to have a prophetic people that can be trusted to not be talking about opinion, to not be talking about a personal agenda, but to actually carry the true word of God and to carry the Father's heart and to communicate it well. So that's one of the invitations. And I think that's a little bit more than for this year. That's something that is for our generation. And we're in a 3 to 5 year period that I think started about a year ago, where there's a sifting that's happening in the prophetic, and how ministries and how people that are pressing into the prophetic, how they allow themselves to be anchored in the prophetic is going to determine the level of influence that they have in the next generation. And we're kind of in this decision process. What we decide and what we do right now is determining the next 10 years for us. So,
I mean, and you're there's something that you're saying here to you're coming into the point that we wanted to start to talk about maturing in the prophetic.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, when it comes to the prophetic is one of those, like any spiritual gift, it's available to absolutely anybody that has a relationship with God. It's not limited for the special. It's not limited for the anointed. And because of that, it's not limited to those that have spiritual maturity. That anybody that presses in, that believes that God speaks, is going to be able to hear God speak. And so when people begin to press in and they begin to hear from God, we have this assumption sometimes that because someone hears from God, that they're mature. They're either mature in their walk with God, they're mature spiritually, or they're mature in the prophetic because they have astoundingly accurate information. But that's not the reality. We all start out in an immature state, and we have to grow and we have to mature in the gifting that God has given us. And when it comes to the prophetic, there's a maturity that happens in the words that we speak, in the way that we receive revelation, but also in the ability to impact others through that revelation. And maturity in the prophetic, it doesn't have to do with accuracy. It has to do with how much of the character of Christ that we carry in what we communicate and how we communicate.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the really big keys that we have to get as a prophetic people, because if we don't do that, then we start out and when we're first being taught how to hear from God. I mean, one of the things I teach this all the time when I'm teaching prophetic schools, start out with imagining, well, what would God say? Like, what's the best thing that God could say to this person? Just imagine something, and then test it out and try it out. And we find that sometimes our imagination gives us permission to hear from God things that our mind would discount. because our mind fights against revelation oftentimes. So we give ourselves permission to imagine we can actually hear from God better. But if we never grow to the point where we discern what's imagination and what's actually revelation, then we begin to continue to imagine things and call them revelation when it's not really revelation. It's actually imagination. So we need to mature from that point of merely imagining into where we can recognize when our imagination is actually revelation and when our imagination is just the imagination. It's just our own minds, our own thoughts, our own opinions that are being communicated. And that is a very important thing for us to grow in. Because if we continue to share opinion and call it revelation, if we continue to share imagination and call it revelation, what's going to happen is an old children's story of the boy that cried wolf. The story about this boy who's out there and he's just he's bored and nothing's going on, and so he begins to wolf, wolf, and the whole town comes out and everybody's all excited and he gets his excitement, but there's no wolf and they can't find a wolf. Oh yeah, I just made it up. And then, you know, he does it again later because he's bored. But then the third time when he does it, nobody comes out to listen. Nobody comes out to look for a wolf. But the problem is there's actually a wolf. And what happens with the prophetic is we continually call stuff revelation that's imagination or that's opinion. And sooner or later, people are going to stop listening because we keep on crying wolf.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And a good habit for someone who is prophesying or delivering words or revelation from the Lord is to follow up on the words, right?
Yes.
Is that something you practice?
Yeah, you know, there's times when you can and there's times when you can't. But whenever you can, it's always a good idea. Especially you need to be, as a prophetic person, I need to be, anybody that's prophetic needs to be in some type of church community where you have people that you're accountable to, that you're doing life with. So you give them prophetic words and you know whether or not they came to pass, how they came to pass. Did you think that maybe it was this, but it actually was that? Did you think it was metaphorical and it was literal, or you thought it was literal and it was actually metaphorical? Or did you get the timing wrong? And you begin to grow because you get that feedback. And that's really, really important. So one of the other things I like to do is I will often, even while I'm giving somebody a prophetic word, let's say I'm going and ministering at a church or at a conference, I'll give somebody a prophetic word and I'll just stop. Does that make sense to you? Or am I accurate? Is there anything to what I'm saying so that I can find out whether or not I'm on the right track? And I've got to be careful with that because it's real easy just to do that and just to do that as a way to make sure, because I'm questioning whether or not it's revelation. And I don't want to do that out of a lack of faith. I want to do that out of an honoring of the person. So I'm not looking for them to give me clues so that I can press in where those clues are, but I'm trying to stay accountable to the prophetic revelation.
I think that's very important for the maturing of the prophet to actually follow up on his or her own words, because otherwise you can end up in imaginations a lot,
right?
And you don't know if it's imagination or if it's revelation, because you never ask the questions. You don't dare asking the questions. So I think it's for me it's I'm not saying it's a new journey, but it's been a couple of years now when I've been following up. As I understand what you're saying, depending on the multitudes you're ministering to or whatever, it's not even, it cannot be possible. And sometimes you're not prophesying to a person, you're prophesying to a group of people. You're not prophesying to an individual or whatever. So it's hard to see, it's hard to cover everything, but I find out it's very maturing. It's very how do you find the word for it? It's very yeah, it's very good to get the response, the negative response, because when you get the negative response that you were wrong or whatever, or you missed it, or as what I found out the most is that you actually you had right raw revelation, but the problem is that you went out and tried to interpret the revelation according to your own knowledge or your own judgment or whatever.
Yeah.
So and when you ask the follow-up question, that's when you notice, my God, I and you can okay, God, I understand. I should stay with the raw information. Just deliver the raw information. Don't try to explain it. Don't try to get the interpretation of it or whatever. Just give the raw word of knowledge, the raw word. You don't need to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
wow.
I also hear you when you're talking about growing, maturing in the prophetic. I also hear you emphasizing maturing in love.
Yeah, this is the same thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It actually is, because maturing in the prophetic is maturing in love. If you're not maturing in love, if you don't look like, smell like, feel like Jesus, you're not representing him well, because the prophetic is to represent God. You're speaking for someone. So if you don't look like and sound like the person you're speaking for, it doesn't matter whether the information is accurate, it's not prophetic.
Yeah.
It's just supernatural information, which psychics can do that. Witches can do that. I used to be able to get information about people before I knew the Lord, but it didn't carry the fragrance of Christ. It was about making people impressed with me because I was so cool, because I could have these experiences, I have these encounters. And when we bring that into our Christianity, it smells like the devil, but it sounds like Jesus. Because we talk about gifting, but we don't anchor it in the nature of the person that we're representing. And that's why it's so important. I mean, 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14, chapter 13 talks all about love and how important it is to love. That's not it's not Paul going on a rabbit trail while he's trying to talk about spiritual giftings. It's the whole point of everything that he's saying about spiritual giftings. Because he starts out in chapter 12. I don't want you to be ignorant about the spiritual. I don't want you to be uninformed as to how the spiritual realm actually works. And so let me explain some things. First, this is what God is like. This is who God is. And number two, it's all about love, because God is love. And if it's not loving, then it cannot be from the God that is revealed in Scripture. It's some other God that's being communicated, some other God that is giving this information. And there are lots of spirits out there that are more than happy to give information to people. And we don't want to have anything to do with them.
No. Yeah, that's good. I like the word in Matthew 5. I don't know if it's verse 45 or 46 or 48. I don't know exactly, but it's the end of chapter 5, when it says that Jesus wants us to be of full maturity. That's what the meaning of that, full maturity, as the Father is of full maturity.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the English version is saying there, actually, but there's another word that gives you a hold.
Be perfect as your Father in heaven is also perfect. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
but God wants His children to be of full age, of reach full maturity, just like the Father is of full maturity. So I mean, maturity, biblical speaking, I usually this is my subject to preach on. But maturity is not so much how many children you produced, or how much money you make in a year, or if you can pay your bills or do your bed. It's very much, it's not maturity in the worldly speaking. Maturity, biblical maturity, is is how much of the nature of God you can manifest in the earth arena. That's the bottom line, and that's where we need to abide in Him who is love.
Yeah,
and that's when love comes out of us and blesses somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, see, and that's, Jesus talked about that just a little bit later in the same message in the Sermon on the Mount. You go to chapter 7, and he's talking about prophets, and he says, you know, there's false prophets, there's true prophets, and you're going to know them by their fruit, because you can recognize the tree by its fruit. And then he goes on to say, you know, there's going to come a day where a lot of people, they're going to come to me and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do many mighty miracles in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we prophesy in your name? And I'm going to say to them, Jesus says, "You'll get away from me. I never knew you." We were never intimate. We never had an experience with each other. And that verse, I mean, it scares me, but it doesn't. It actually gives me comfort at the same time. I realize that I can have spiritual activity, that I can work miracles, and I can have dreams and visions, and I can hear these prophetic things, but it doesn't determine whether or not I'm actually having relationship with the Father. Yeah. And what's most important is that relationship with the Father. So it takes a lot of pressure off, because it's no longer about how many miracles that I have happening, but it's about my intimacy with the Father. And then I can trust the overflow of intimacy as children. Yeah. Like that's going to happen. So if I have intimacy with the Father, then I'm going to bear fruit in the earth. And it's going to look like miracles, and it's going to look like prophetic experiences, and it's going to look like demons being cast out. But my focus is on intimacy, not on the fruit. No. And his focus is on the fruit, because I've made my focus on intimacy.
It's good. It's really good. John, let's switch focus a little bit.
Okay.
We talked about maturing. For you that has just tuned in on this Facebook Live tonight, go ahead and share this. If you like this, if you think this is good news, if you think this is something that is edifying for people, go ahead and share with your followers. Go ahead and share with people that you know. So many people can come in contact with what John is doing. He's going to also have opportunities to tell us how you can come in contact with him through the internet. He has his own Facebook Live, monthly or weekly or many times a week. I'm not sure.
Yeah, a couple times a month.
Yeah, a couple of times a month. Yeah. But also tonight, if you have, we're going to now enter in to talk about dreams and interpretation, and ahead of looking what the Bible says and how much it is about this subject in the Bible. I've told John before this broadcast started that I'm a no-wise, so I'm going to ask all the dumb questions tonight. But if you have a dream, maybe you have had a dream recently or had a dream some years ago, something that you really believe God tried to communicate something to you, go ahead and write that in the comment box below, or direct message us tonight, and so we can tell that dream to John, and let's see if he gets something from the Lord, what that can mean, and what the Lord is trying to communicate to you. So go ahead and write your dream. You can write it in Swedish, you can write it in Norwegian, Danish. I'm not so good at understanding, but also in English, of course. So please go ahead and do that for us, or for your own sake. John, take us on the journey on interpreting dreams.
Yeah.
Give us the biblical context on why God is speaking through dreams.
You know, Proverbs 25:2 says that it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search it out. We sometimes have this idea, like if God is going to speak, that he's just going to say it really clear and it's going to be really easy to understand. but that's actually not the way that God normally speaks. He usually speaks in metaphor. He usually speaks in riddles. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 6, he tells Aaron and Miriam, they're having this thing, well, we hear from God too. And he goes, you know, you're not like my servant Moses. Most people, when I talk through dreams, I talk through visions, but with my servant Moses, him I talk to face. My normal way of communicating is through dreams and visions. And then you get to the ministry of Jesus in Matthew 13. He tells all these parables, and his disciples are like, Jesus, why do you keep on telling these parables? Why don't you just say what you mean? Because people don't understand what it is that you're saying. And he goes, well, to you it's been given to understand, but to them it hasn't been given to understand. And this is in the context of a parable about the four soils, which he then interprets. And he says, you know, these four soils are four different types of hearts. Like one heart, they just get busy because they've got so much going on, and they never actually get fruit. They like the experience, but they don't take the time to actually develop roots and actually care something. The cares of this world choke out the life. Some of it, the enemy actually steals the revelation, and then some of it is because persecution. It's just too hard. People don't understand us. People question us. The world tells us that it's not real. We have people telling us you can't actually hear from God. That's ESP. That's not real. And so we have these things that hide. But then there's the good heart that is willing to seek out the understanding, and that's the heart that bears fruit. And when it comes to revelation, that's how God actually does this. He will actually communicate things in a metaphoric way to reveal what's going on in our hearts, because our response to metaphor and our response to mystery tells us what our hearts are actually like, what the soil of our heart is actually like. And when it comes to the parables, I mean, in Matthew 13, and Jesus told his disciples, well, to you guys are going to be able to understand the parables. He never once told them a secret a secret knowledge that gave them understanding of those parables. When they wanted to understand a parable, they came to him. Like, Jesus, like, you just said this parable. What does that mean? And he would explain the parable. Well, Jesus, you just said this parable. What does that mean? And he would explain the parable. And that's exactly what happens with dreams and visions. He doesn't give us a dream dictionary that gives us all the answers as to what this means and that means. And there's some help from those things. So I'm not against dream dictionaries, but that's not what we rely on to understand dreams. Those just give us a starting point to begin to ask God, because our ability to understand dreams comes from our relationship with the Father. You know, God, I had this dream. I don't know what it means. What were you trying to say? And when we come back to him in relationship, then he begins to unwrap those things and unravel things through intimacy, through relationship. And that's that's the biblical way of understanding dreams.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So how did you come into this area of trying to or did it start with you having dreams that you were curious of what God was communicating to you, or did you hear people preach about it, teach about it, and start to entering this area?
Right. Well, I ran into John Paul Jackson, and I mean, that's one of his themes, was to teach on dream interpretation, because he had this ability to understand dreams from the time that he was a child. And he talked a little bit about dreams, and I didn't have the chance to really study it at that point in time, but I was curious, and I was really hungry to hear God's voice. But I would have people come up to me and just ask me, hey, I had the weirdest dream. You don't know anything about dreams, do you? And it wasn't people that had any reason to think that I could understand dreams. It was just completely, quote unquote, random. It was just obviously God was putting me into these situations, and they'd tell me their dream, and I would share something with them, and it would make sense to them. And so I really started to study it out and try to understand, well, how does this work? And I took all the courses that John Paul had written, and then I practiced dream interpretation. and got around other people that were interpreting dreams, and we would interpret dreams together. For a while, when I was on staff at Streams in New Hampshire, we would, as a staff, we would take our lunch break and we would actually sit down and just interpret dreams together for the full hour of our lunch break. And so we got to practice quite a bit and help each other. Well, I'm not sure if it means this. I think it means this. And then, somebody would share a meaning and everybody would be like, wow, now that's God. Okay, that's the right interpretation. How did you get that? Mm-hmm. And we would learn from one another. And it just grew over time in our ability to recognize when God was giving the interpretation.
Oh. So how can one know that a dream is of God or I ate too much pizza?
Good question, because we all have those pizza dreams. One of the things about an actual pizza dream is not going to have a plot or a storyline. It's just going to be random pictures. I saw a monkey. There was a fish flying through the air, and then my grandma started laughing. Just weird things that don't connect. They don't have a story to them. Those are usually kind of like the pizza dreams. But when there's a story, there's usually a lack of story. Kind of like a parable. A parable is I guess I'm not. I'm not.
Okay. For you that are just joining in us, I'm going to be cutting this later and see if we can get something good out of this for our YouTube followers as well. Now, John, we were talking about dreams, and we're not going to keep you so much longer because time is running away from us. But we're talking about dreams and how one can realize that it's a dream from God or not. And and you were talking about that, if it's not a story, I've heard you before talk about if it's black and white and not full color. There's different ways of looking at it. But are you in the arena that every dream is from God or it's from the devil, and then you have some gray zone? Or do you also have the knowledge or understanding that some dreams can be, your mind trying to go through past experiences, trying to work out issues, try to, sometimes you have the dreams that you're winning the lottery. Sometimes you have the dreams that you're falling out of a plane, your worst nightmares happening.
Right.
What is your holistic view on that?
Yeah. Well, God talking to Jeremiah, he talks about dreams that we cause ourselves to dream. So there are some dreams that we actually cause ourselves to dream. And so if there's unsettled emotional issues, and it's usually not just stuff from the past that's not bothering us. It's usually stuff that is really bothering us right now. We call them soul dreams. The soul is the mind, the will, the emotions. If there's something like you can't stop thinking about something, you're obsessing over it, it's not unusual to dream about it that night. Or if you have something that's really bothering you emotionally, it's not unusual to dream about it. If you're stuck, your will, your desire is stuck on winning the lottery or something like that, it's not unusual to cause yourself to dream about it. I was actually at a restaurant, and I like to periodically, I'll be different places, and I'll go to some random stranger and say, hey, I've been learning how to interpret dreams. I'm wondering if you have a dream that I could practice on, because I need to practice on interpretation. And it's just a great way to get somebody to share a dream. And I doing that at a restaurant one time, and the waitress that was helping us, she goes, well, I did have this dream. I had this dream that my boyfriend, we were in a room together, and he got down on one knee and he opened up a box and it had a ring in it, and he asked me to marry him. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, well, let me think on that for just a second, because I want to be sure that I'm actually hearing what God's saying about the dream. And so she goes and gets her drink order. And, you know, while she's going and coming back, I'm just thinking about that dream. It didn't feel, I couldn't feel God in it. It didn't feel like God was saying, yeah, this dream is for me. But it also didn't feel like it was an evil thing. It didn't feel bad. It just felt like it was. And so when she came back, I asked her, I said, hey, I got a question. You and your boyfriend have been together for a while. You think it's past time that he pops the question, that he asks you to marry him? And she goes, oh, yeah, we've been together for a long time. It's definitely time for that to happen. I said, well, what this dream is saying is that you want that so badly that you're causing yourself to dream about it. She said, oh, okay. And that kind of dream is really common. And we do outreaches at film festivals where we'll go and be in these places. I did one in Austin, Texas, the South by Southwest. It's country music and film festival. So all these people that are coming and they're hoping to be discovered as the next great film star, the next great country music star, next great director, they're there and they're just, you know, they're trying to engage. And we would run into dream after dream of people that would have dreams of being discovered and they're the next great star and they're the next, you know, the next great thing that's going to happen. The popularity happens. But most of those dreams were just soul dreams. That's what they wanted. That's what they were obsessing over. And so they cause themselves to dream about it. One of the kind of charismatic term that we'll use for that is a stronghold. Your strongholds will give you dreams. And so if there's an area of a stronghold, it'll often cause there to be dreams. So if you're going through a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and you feel like your life is out of control and you can't give that to the Lord, and it's deeper than just, you know, there's times we all go through, I'm stressed out right now, I've got a little bit of anxiety, but sometimes it gets really deep and it's a real issue. It's actually a stronghold. Then we'll have dreams of falling. We'll feel like everything is out of control. And that can just be that picture of our soul. So that is one of the types of dreams that we have.
How can you give an example of interpreting someone's dream? Do you have a dream in mind that someone told you and how you got the interpretation and what the interpretation was?
Yeah. Boy, I mean, I've interpreted probably a good 10,000 dreams. So thinking of just one, yeah, when I try to think of one, I usually end up with one that I use a lot of times when I'm teaching. So I'm actually going to do that. It's one of the dreams that's in a course. I actually talk about it a lot. I was, and this is one that I'd missed at first, and then somebody had to help me with it. So it was during that time period when we were getting together at lunch, me and some of the other people that were on staff at Streams at that point, and we were talking about our dreams and interpreting them. Well, one of the dreams that we were given was this lady that was walking through this pathway, and she described the pathway. She said she wasn't sure what it was, but it was tall on both sides, and it was wide enough that she was able to walk comfortably, but it wasn't so wide that there was room for anybody else. And she's carrying her cat, and she just is walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and walking. And after a long time, she comes to kind of this opening, and she knows that her destination is still a long ways off. But in this opening, there's this old rundown shack, and it looks like it's kind of beat up, and but it's there. And as she's trying to decide, well, am I just going to stay here or am I going to go on to my destination? She decides, well, I need to go to my destination. Her cat jumps out of her arms and runs into the shack. And so she goes into the shack and decides, you know what, I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going to keep on going. It's, you know, we need to rest, and my cat just needs to rest. It doesn't want to keep on going. So she decides to stay there. So I'm thinking, well, you know, you're on this journey and, you know, there's some things that are hindering you. And that was kind of accurate, but I'd actually missed part of the dream. And so some of my friends, they're helping me out with this. What is a cat? Well, a cat is, it can mean a lot of different things. One, something that this person loves. That's kind of where I went. It's their pet.
You're
They
so
love it.
nice. You're so
But if
nice.
you think about a personality of a
You're so nice. That's why you're so nice.
yeah,
Otherwise, people would
yeah, I know, I
someday.
know. I
I'm just
tried to
kidding.
be really nice. Yeah. But if the personality of a cat, they want what they want, period. If they don't want to be
Excellent.
petted, they're not going to let you pet them. Yeah, they're very willful. They're very will oriented, and it's talking about sometimes a cat can represent your will, your desires, right? And so there was something of her own will, something that she wanted, that it would just be more comfortable for her to stay in a place of poverty and never reaching her destiny, the destiny that God had for her, if she would just go after this thing that she wanted instead of continuing to lay down what she wanted to pursue. But God was calling her to leave the cat and to walk to her destiny. And it wasn't about her cat, and it wasn't about the fact that it was a cat. It was about that willful thing of just what she desired and settling for this place of poverty and not pursuing everything that God had for her. Now, all of a sudden, that changed. The dream, it was, I had a little bit of a warning when I was trying to be too nice, but really this was a warning from God that if you don't go get past these things, you're never going to reach your destiny. And that's what the dreamer needed to hear.
Oh, that's good. That's good. John, can we read one or two dreams tonight?
I think that would be great. Yeah.
To this train wreck of technical issues. Yeah.
Technology.
I haven't read them before, but I see there is at least two long comments here when I think it's about dream. The first one is Teresa, and I saw that Teresa she was reminding us of the dream just a second ago. She wrote. Okay. I dreamt that I was at a meeting and a lot was going on, but I went and sat in the back in complete peace with my father. All of a sudden, I was covered in gold dust, and my father too. Then this weighty rain came down, and I had my eyes closed and didn't see anything, but I opened my hands to collect what was pouring down. When I opened my eyes, I had felt really smooth, small items, but looked like I think you're writing raindrops. No, but it looked like dried up brown peas. I was puzzled by it and looked at my father and myself again, and we were still covered by the gold dust. I thought to myself that at least that part was real.
Yeah, that is so good, because there's this it's this dream, Teresa, is really helping you to understand a situation that you're in so that you keep your focus right. And what it's saying is you're coming into a situation, or you're in a situation, the meeting. So this is some type of a church. It's some type of religious activity, which is not a negative thing. That could be a very positive thing. But there's so much going on in your spiritual life right now. But where your focus needs to be is just being at peace with the Father. And so your father in this dream is actually Father God. It's not your earthly father. It's about Father God. And in the midst of all the activity, in the midst of everything that's going on, taking that time just to be at peace and to sit with your Father, because as you do, he's going to be pouring out his glory. And so the gold dust represents the glory of heaven. It represents the presence of God just coming and going. And it's in that place that you're able just to stay in his presence and enjoy what's happening. And when stuff begins to happen, don't get distracted from being with your Father, because what God has poured out and the glory that he's poured out is real, even though you're going to experience some other things that are not as real. Just don't get distracted, because what you have with your Father is real, and what you received in that season when it began, that was real. That was from heaven. Even though some of the other things that you experienced or that you're going to experience was not as real. It actually, so, Brown sometimes will talk about the flesh. They'll talk about human, because we're made of dirt. So it's talking about the humanity and usually the negative aspects of humanity. And so, in the midst of this activity, there's the gold, there's the glory, but there's also flesh that gets involved in the spiritual activity. Don't get distracted by it. Keep your focus on what God really did do, on the glory that's there, because even through all the stuff that happened, the glory remains. What God poured out is still real, even after the stuff that is maybe a mixture of people with what God is doing. So it's an encouragement for you, and it'll help you keep your heart in the right place when this happens. Or if it's already happened, it's a reminder that what God did was real, even though there was some other stuff that came along afterwards.
Amen. My God. That was good. I was encouraged.
That's a great dream. It really is.
Please give us live response. Therese, what is your thought on the interpretation of that dream that John just gave you? I can just say, I'm a pastor in real life also, so I can just say amen. If you gave that word to some of my members in my church, I would ask their pastor to say amen. Amen. We're the gatekeepers.
Awesome.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So please give us response to Therese. And as we're waiting for your response, write in the comment box. I want to give you another one, John. Is that all right for you? And
yeah.
Actually, there's a couple here, but I think I'm going to go with this one. I haven't read it. It's Nikki. I don't know if Nikki is still with us, but Nikki is writing, I dream of being in a canoe on a river. I approach a duck and stroke it. It says it's been a long time. The name of The name of the canoe is calling Sowing Whale Surf. Had a previous dream where my car drowned in the river. Whale. Dream my feet being at the feet of a friend in one dream, my cat in another, and a horse in another. I got sparkles with my friend's foot. Was woken when the horse woke up and saw magical colors from my cat's paw touching my foot. Having the two dreams with the brown horse. I'm not sure to make what to make out of this.
Yeah, it sounds like there's multiple dreams there. So maybe I'll just focus on the first dream and see if I can remember this, and you can kind of look at what was written and make sure I'm remembering this correctly. So in the first dream, they're in a canoe in the river, and there's a duck there, and the duck tells them it's been a long time, but the name of the canoe is Sowing, and it was Whale something.
Whale surf.
Sowing Whale Surf. Sowing Whale Surf. Okay. So, because that dream, I think that's different. So I think some of the other dreams are just a series of different dreams that this dreamer's had. But that particular dream, so the river, usually a river talks about a move of God because the water is moving. And when the water is contained, it's not necessarily a move of God. It could be talking about a spiritual community. But when it's moving, the river would talk about a move of God, the Spirit of God that's moving. And a canoe is the vessel that allows you to be in the midst of it. And so it could be what it is that you're doing to how you access this move of God. And you're seeing in that environment, the duck it's something, it's able to fly, but it's also able to be in the water. So it's able to fly in the Spirit, but also be in the middle of the move of God and operate in that. And it's saying it's been a long time. So it's been a long time since you've been in this place. There was a move of God that you were in, but it's been a long time since you've been there. But you're seeing yourself in it again because you're coming back. And the reason you're coming back is because the vehicle that you're in, the vehicle is sowing. Because you've sown to the Spirit, you're going to reap from the Spirit. Because you sowed to the Spirit, you're going to reap from the Spirit. And the whole thing of the whale talks about something that has huge impact in the things of Spirit. So that can talk about a revival, that can talk about something that's huge in the realm of the Spirit. Because you've sown into things, you're going to be reaping some things. It's been a long time since you've been there, but you're coming back into that season where you're going to be in the middle of a move of God again because of what you've sown. So that's a great promise.
I'm just trying to find Teresa, what she's writing here.
Okay.
She's asking, I think she's asking, maybe I'm not seeing all the comments here. I think she's asking Teresa that you talked about earlier. Oh, I'm getting lost here. Mm-hmm. No, I lost her comment. It went away. But John, I'm trying to look for it. Just a quick time.
Yes.
But before we end this Facebook Live, it's been a pleasure having you with us. Let us know how people can get a hold of you, how people can stay in touch with Streams Ministry and what you're doing, and tell us also what you can offer online. I know you have e-courses. I guess you have e-courses. I know you have some kind of
we do
Facebook group you can be a part of, or also you do Facebook Live. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so on our website, we've got a number of resources. We got free resources, and then we also have a whole classroom of stuff that you can do. So streamsministries.com. You go to streamsministries.com, and that's kind of where you can find all the different things. When you go to streamsministries.com, at the bottom of the page, it has all of our social media. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. You can follow us in all those places. YouTube, we put out a number of videos on a regular basis. We're putting out new videos, videos from myself, videos from John Paul Jackson. But on our website, on streamsministries.com, if you look for classroom, we've got courses that I've written and taught, and courses that John Paul wrote and taught, all about dream interpretation, hearing from God, aspects of the prophetic. If you want to just go into understanding how to interpret dreams and get a biblical model for that, I mean, the course that John Paul wrote called Understanding Dreams and Visions, it's on the website. It's like 18 hours worth of videos. And it comes with, you can get it with a PDF manual, because I know if you're in Sweden or Norway or over in Europe, you don't want somebody to be shipping a manual, because the cost of shipping is a lot. But we just get a PDF manual. You could watch it from your own computer and just follow along, and it will go through all the biblical basis of interpreting dreams, helping you to understand the process, but also giving you a bunch of different elements and what they might mean, but keeping it anchored in the idea that it's all about what God is speaking to you, teaching you how to engage with the voice of God to hear. So that's just one of the courses. We've got a number of courses that are available that deal with a lot of different subjects. And we've got a lot of little teachings. Almost all of our teachings are available as an MP3 download, just to make it easier for you to get it right, without having to worry about a CD or a DVD getting shipped to you. So we've got a lot of resources that can help you.
And when do you have an annual conference?
We have a conference coming up this year. We haven't decided yet if it's going to be annual. We think that it will be. We haven't done a conference, a big conference, for a number of years. But in February 14th through the 16th, myself and Graham Cook and my friend Charity Bowman Webb from Scotland are all going to come together. We're going to be doing Love and Prophecy. I've got a friend, Andrew Hopkins from San Diego. He's a worship leader that has been in the middle of a move of God in San Diego for about 2 years, and he's the main worship leader over there. He's going to come and do worship for us, and we're just going to press into what it means. What's the intersection of love and the prophetic, and why is that so important? So that's happening right here in Dallas in February 14th through 16th. So if you can come and make it, it's going to be really good. We have people from all over the world. We've already got people from Sweden that said that they're coming. Obviously, Scotland. We've got South Africa that's coming, Hong Kong. So literally all over the world, we have people that are going to be a part of this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I would love to come back to Texas. Yeah.
Well, if you do, bring a camera, and we can do this without the internet trying to break us, or we could just come into my studio. I'll have you come in here and we'll record it and give you a nice video for the Love Revival TV.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bless you, brother.
Yeah.
I just want to end by saying that I just wrote, but now the comment is gone again. Many people are writing, asking for interpretations of their dreams right now. So I suggest that you look up John when he's sending live. Post your questions about your dreams live to him on his live broadcast.
Yeah.
I just want to say that Teresa said that was so good. It makes so much sense. Now she's posting it again. It makes so much sense, and she's writing some more stuff that we don't have time to read right now.
Good.
But bless everybody that's been part of this broadcast. And John, good to have you here, and I hope to see you soon, brother.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best, and especially the conference coming up. And I know you have so much to scheduled and so much things happening. So we so want to appreciate that you took the time to be with us on Love Revival tonight. So
thank you for having me.
God bless
I appreciate
you, man.
it.
And let's stay in touch.
And you.
Bless you. Bye-bye. And for you that are watching Love Revival, I want you to know that from this date, we're taking a little bit of holiday, Christmas leave. We're taking a little bit Christmas vacations. We're not going to be doing our live prayers during Christmas, but we're aiming to start again the 6th of January 2019. It's going to be New Year, and we're going to do our live prayers on Sunday nights, and starting the 6th of January. I hope you all had a wonderful night, and I wish you a Merry, Merry Christmas. From me, Jonatan Svensson, I'm signing out for tonight. God bless you. Bye-bye.